I think we need somebody out here to answer those questions. So please, with no further ado, please help me welcome writer, director, producer, filmmaker, Edgar Wright.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Welcome. Is this your first time here in North Carolina?
It is not.
It is not, okay.
Weirdly, I was here this time last year, not at the convention. My other half was playing a gig in Raleigh, and we were walking around, and I said, why are all these people in anime costumes? Oh, there must be a convention on. And 1 year later, I'm here.
And 1 year later, you're here.
I've been to Wilmington before as well. Home of the films Blue Velvet and Maximum Overdrive. And others.
Yes. Empire Records was filmed.
Evil Dead 2.
Evil Dead 2. They call it the Hollywood of the East, the old Wilmington. Well, welcome here. Welcome to GalaxyCon. We are super excited to have you here. Any hot Fuzz fans? Shaun of the Dead? Scott Pilgrim? Okay. I think you got some fans out here.
What about my appearance in Sing 2? That's a very deep cut. I didn't even recognize my voice in it, and I did it.
So you've been making films for even longer than you could drive. Is that correct?
No, not quite. No, I made my first film when I was 20, so I had already been driving for 3 years.
Okay.
But I guess before I could legally drink in the States.
Okay, right. Legally. Yeah, we're all about legality. So what were your first, the process of getting that first first project? Was it something that you had been thinking about for years, or was this something that you're like, oh, I'm going to do this, and it came out right then?
I think I was always, myself and my brother, my parents are both artists and also taught art at school, and they definitely encouraged us in sort of the creative arts, and sort of obsessed with movies from a very young age, but not, and especially in a sort of pre-internet age or having access to even books about film, it wasn't kind of obvious what the route into filmmaking would be.
Right.
And so I think when I was a teenager, there were different things I thought in film I would like to do, like I was interested in animation, interested in makeup. And then actually the thing that was the real kind of like light bulb moment was in the UK, there's this presenter, Jonathan Ross. He did this amazing series called The Incredibly Strange Film Show. And on network TV, they had whole hours dedicated to George Romero, Russ Meyer, John Waters, and in particular, there was an episode on Sam Raimi. And in the Sam Raimi episode, it showed his Super 8 shorts that preceded Evil Dead. Right. And that was a real like moment of like the moment where I went into school the next day and told my friends that I'm going to be a film director. I kind of sort of like thought that's what I'm going to do. And it was really, it wasn't even necessarily seeing the films, it was seeing that and seeing, oh, somebody who's not from Hollywood, you know, from Michigan, like made a Super 8 movie and then made a movie. Didn't go to film school. So that was it. And then sort of after that, my parents, knowing how sort of obsessed me and my brother were, and not from a rich background, but like one of those presents that, you ever get those, if you've got brothers or sisters, where you get a present between you?
Yes.
We had like a joint birthday, joint Christmas present. This is taking up 4 different presents, but it was a secondhand Super 8 camera. Oh. And so as soon as we got that, we were sort of just off to the races. Although, and it's funny in the day and age of iPhones, but you know, back then Super 8 film was quite expensive.
Right.
£30 a go, and you know it was back in the late '80s. So I started making things on Super 8, and that turned into just making amateur films, and then I went to art college for 2 years, and then I made the first film I made when I was 20, which was very, very low budget. Maybe that the entire cost of the production was £11,000, and that was a 16mm version of something that I'd made on video, basically.
You just mentioned many different directors and filmmakers that have been your influences. Are there any directors out there now who you would consider an influence, or that modern audiences haven't discovered yet that you are excited for, the mainstream audiences to finally see their work?
I mean, are people out there that people wouldn't know? That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of directors out there whose work I always like. I'm excited to see what they're. I mean, these are not established. These are not like sort of new people. Some of them have won Oscars, but I always like kind of like a big fan of the Korean filmmakers. Like Park Chan-wook and Bong Joon-ho. Like the. I'm always just excited to see what they're doing. And in fact, on my last 2 movies, I worked with Park Chan-wook's cinematographer, Chung Chung-hoon, who was amazing. So, but there are lots of great. I mean, there's such a great like boom of like directors in horror that's really exciting. And like everybody else, I'm sure in this room, I enjoyed Obsession and Backrooms, and just excited to see what Zach Cregger does with Resident Evil, and like so there's a lot of people out there that I really excited to see what they do.
How much of your style is developed in the writing process versus on set, or possibly even post-production during your editing?
It's usually worked out in the planning of it, because you have to shoot. You can't edit the shots if you don't have the shots.
Right. Very true.
So you have to design it, but then sometimes, maybe even on like Shaun of the Dead, it was always like initially like a struggle to get people to understand why all these close-ups were important. Okay. And usually all the things, it's funny because it's like, if it's one of the things that becomes part of your style, at the time when we were making it, you'd get these questions from the line producer saying, do we really need the close-up of this? And it's like, yeah, we really do. And I think I had to prove it by, I remember on Shaun of the Dead, to get all of those close-ups, we staggered. We had an A and B camera, and we would stagger lunches. So when A camera went to lunch, I'd stay with B camera and like knock off like 3 inserts over lunch, and then they would go for lunch, and I would just basically work through the day. So, but it was that thing is like where you had to kind of really like prove why this was important. I mean, I think you have to do that all the time,
And then along with your style, music obviously plays a critical role in your films. Has there been moments where you built an entire scene around a song before you even thought about dialogue?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, yes, in the case, I mean, in Shaun of the Dead, there's the Queen scene.
Right, but
that was written into the script, and I think that then, I'd already sort of had the idea for Baby Driver, which was sort of the idea was like, what if every scene was set to a song? And so in writing that, there would be some songs that I'd earmarked.
Okay.
As in, this is a song, and I can imagine the scene that goes with it.
Right.
And then in writing the script, I would kind of like write it in chronological order, and if I got to a scene where I didn't have a song, I would like find the song and then write the scene.
Okay.
And I'd say about 90% of the songs that I had worked out ended up being in the film.
Right.
And then very rarely you might have to change something. Or in one instance in Baby Driver, there's one song that we shot, and in the edit, it finally cracked me where it's like, usually they're their favorite songs, and I was thinking, I think I can listen to this song one more time. And I changed it. I changed the song. I did a little bit of reshooting, and I switched the song in the process, because I think I'm not sure I can sit through that one again. But yeah, so there's been a few things like that. Last Night in Soho was also like that, in the sense of the songs sort of informed the film.
So along those same lines of building a scene around a song, you have these songs in mind. Has there been a case that you were like, yep, okay, we're doing this song, we're building this scene around it, but you weren't able to get the licensing, so you had to maybe change the scene to another song?
I mean, usually it's just a matter of like things cost money and stuff.
Right, you just have to throw money at
So
it.
like, like in the last film, The Running Man, there's a Rolling Stones song, and even though I've used the Rolling Stones before, it was definitely like for some reason like the sort of most like it becomes the most expensive song just because it's the Stones. And then you always have to do a thing where it's just funny situations you get into where you have to write a nice letter to Mick and Keith to sort of plead for like a bargain. In Baby Driver, there are a couple of ones we had to change because they were songs which had sampled other songs and they had not cleared those samples. So then you get into a situation where it's like, okay, so we can't use that, but then what if we used the original song that is being sampled? So that happened a couple of times in Baby Driver, yeah.
One of my go-to, especially convention weekends, I get to my room, I turn on my TV, I just need like a comfort movie, and that is Scott Pilgrim. It's a movie that when I want to calm down, I just want to watch something familiar, but watch something good. Scott Pilgrim is one of my go-tos. What is it like working on creating that movie from something that already has a previous source for something that you are creating?
It was a real gift with that one because I was handed the book by one of the producers, I think the week that it came out. So it was an interesting experience because A, we were working very closely with Brian Lee O'Malley, who created the comic, but B, that he was still writing them when we were in development. So there were some things where, like, some of the things that are in the film are based on, he'd written 3 books and he had an outline for the next 3. But then as we were making the movie, he sort of changed what he was doing. So some of the things that are in the film almost refer to his original outline. And then also we'd written the screenplay. And then sometimes Brian would say to us, hey, do you mind if I borrow that line? So there's one line that's in the books that me and Michael Bacall wrote. So it was actually a really good experience because it was kind of happening in tandem with each other. And as such, I think that they're all, like, as an adaptation, it's not exactly the books, but then I think that's kind of nice that, like, the books and the film are a bit different, and then the recent anime thing was a different thing again. I think that's nice, personally.
It was just announced 2 days ago that after 16 years, Scott Pilgrim comic is making a comeback. So, is there a world out there where we could see another Scott Pilgrim film?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know the answer to that. It was, I think when the anime thing came around, because somebody from Universal got in touch with me, and this is literally what I said, what can we do with Scott Pilgrim that's not an expensive live-action sequel? And I was like, well, an anime version? So I don't know the answer to that question. Okay. And I have not read anything, so I don't know.
So this is gonna be my last question before we head over there. If you had any advice to give young Edgar, what would that advice be?
I got asked this question a couple of times at my signing, and it'd probably be the same thing. Is like, if you're starting out and trying to make films, it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to fail. You actually kind of learn a lot by failing at something. And I think sometimes people put a lot of pressure on themselves to achieve perfection first time out. Mm-hmm. And it's very, very rarely going to happen. And you just shouldn't hold yourself to such high standards because the trial and error is how you learn how to direct. Not everybody makes Citizen Kane straight out of the gate. That might be a one-off thing. So I think that's the thing, is it's okay to kind of make mistakes, and it's okay to learn from your mistakes. That's how you learn to do anything. And sometimes I feel that kind of people who are making films tie themselves up in knots, or even can't even go through the process because they're scared of failing. But I think it's okay, My first film is, I think, easily the least of my movies, and there's lots of things I don't like about it, but I'm really happy I made it because it gave me lots of lessons of what to do if I was lucky enough to do it another time.
This is the second time I've heard that statement this weekend, that where you learn from your failure. So I think it's a great message, and I love hearing that again. Would you like to answer some of our questions from our audience here?
Absolutely not.
Oh.
No, I'm good.
All right, we're done here, everyone. Bye. Hi. What is your name? Yeah, right in the spotlight. Hi.
Hi, my name is Amaya.
Hi.
I want to start off by saying I had no idea who you were. But I saw you did Scott Pilgrim. I'm like, oh, yeah. So I just want to know, like, how did you, like, come up with, like, the transitions in the movie, or like that joke when like Scott's like, "Don't tell anyone I'm dating a 16-year-old," and he's like, "You know me," and then he's like, and then Stacy calls me like, "You're dating a 17-year-old," blah 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 blah, and then he's like, "Wallace, you know me," like.
Well, some of that stuff is some of it is straight from the comic. It was I mean, that Brian Lee O'Malley's original comic is, it was so great to read that and just imagine what the movie could be like. But also then there's the process of making that into live action. And so a lot of the transitions, they're not in the comic, but they're sort of inspired by comic book framing and like sound effects and other things. So it was really like that element of it, because at the time as well, a lot of the comic book adaptations were all trying to make comics look more realistic. And the thing with Scott Pilgrim was like, well, you could make it feel more like the comic book. Right. You could go in the opposite direction. And so that was a real joy to have that artwork to work from and then come up with all of those ideas based on that. It was great. It was really fun.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Hi, what's your name?
Matthew.
Hi, Matthew.
Hi. So, there are a lot of...
Do you know who I am?
Of course I do. Shaun of the Dead, Scott Pilgrim, Baby Driver, Scott... Anyway. There are a lot of Hot Fuzz fans here, myself included, and anyone who's seen that movie knows about the greater good and all the implications that entails. When it came to unraveling the story, was that solution something you knew from the start before framing much around it, or was it and the climax something you came up with as you were making it? Like, man, wouldn't it be fun if you ended like that? And in general, how much of your original stories are pre-planned versus spontaneous?
I mean, it's very little. I think it's funny, when we used to do the press tours for those 3 movies, every single Q&A, people would say, how much of it is improvised? And we'd be like, well, none of it. Like, it's all written, because especially something like Hot Fuzz, where the plot is really intricate, like, you have to, like, write that all down. There's not sort of, like, much. The only bits of deviation from that might be is that there's something funny that comes up in rehearsal where you think, oh, that's good, let's write that in. Or maybe there's very, very few bits within the films where the actors are kind of, like, riffing on something that's in the script. But Hot Fuzz in particular is obviously kind of like, because it's a conspiracy whodunit plot, we had to kind of work all of that out before. And so we spent a long time just plotting the movie before we even like started writing it, So yeah, I think it's all like sort of, everything is on the page. I think if you read the Hot Fuzz screenplay, it's sort of all there.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you.
Hi, what is your name?
Hello, my name is Meg. As someone who has slogged through the hell that is film school, I can very easily say that Mr. Wright is someone that has had a really significant impact on my generation of filmmakers. And the way that I see that the most in like reflected in my peers' short films and things like that is through the use of music. So I'm really glad you touched on that, because that's what my question's about. As someone who currently works in music licensing, knowing the astronomically high prices of licenses, as you mentioned earlier, do you create your budget ahead of time, sort of during development stages or during production, because songs are so baked into the text of your films? Or is that a separate process?
Yeah, I think you have to. In the case of Baby Driver, we obviously you had to clear all the music before, because otherwise you don't want to be in a situation where you're in the edit and like you've done a whole sequence to a song and it's like, oh, we can't get the song. Exactly. I also remembered hearing about Reservoir Dogs, that there was a kind of cautionary tale where they hadn't cleared a lot of those songs before it was finished, and then when some of the publishers found out how integral the songs were to the film, they jacked the price up. Yeah. So, and that was always like a sort of, and I think ever since then, Quentin Tarantino never put the song titles in the script ever again. Because he's like, I don't want anybody to know how important they are. But early on, though, I think you do have to think on a more practical level. Like when we were doing Shaun of the Dead, when we were temping, you put temp score on before you have a real score. And it's always like a smart, it's like, don't temp with music that you can't afford, because you're going to be disappointed. And I always say it to people making like short films, is like, don't put John Williams on your short or Ennio Morricone, because then when you do something that you could afford, and John Carpenter, for example, Halloween is and Assault on Precinct 13, two of the greatest scores. John Carpenter on the synthesizer. Kind of like greatest scores, but also like really like low budget scores. It's just him. And so he can do that. So it's like when we were doing Shaun of the Dead, we used a lot of those kind of like things like Goblin and John Carpenter because we know, we know we could achieve this. Like, don't put anything on that you don't know that you can afford. And then the only, like, we had the Queen song in Shaun of the Dead, so that was a big, like, we had to really work at that and make sure we could get it. So it's definitely changed over time, but back then it's always you kind of have to kind of manage your expectations and definitely don't bank on something. Like, don't write your first feature film saying it's going to be all Led Zeppelin songs. Like, it's not going to happen. So just, I think, sort of work within your budget or work within something that you think you can achieve.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello. I was wondering, when did you realize that Scott Pilgrim was becoming such a cult classic?
I think, and this doesn't always happen like this, but it was actually, when the film came out, it was obviously like disappointing to us all because we'd worked so hard on it and we were doing so much press. But I think our policy, there's something that happens where like, sometimes when a film doesn't do well, like or at the box office, theatrically at least, the cast and the crew sort of like run for the hills and pretend like it never happened. And I think what we decided, myself and the cast of Scott Pilgrim, was to pretend like that hadn't happened, and we just carried on like doing Q&As. And so it was sort of a funny. And so I think sort of by the end of that year, we were already doing like midnight screenings, especially in LA at first. And it was like both the New Beverly and the New Art in Los Angeles were like running it at midnight. And because a lot of us lived in Los Angeles at that time, we would like do Q&A. So I kind of felt like sort of quite, sometimes films like take years to find their audience, but I felt very, even by the time the DVD had come out and later that year, things were already starting to change. So I feel very fortunate and grateful for the fans that kind of kept that one in the cinema,
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Hello. I like that jacket.
Oh, thank you. Oh, this is really low. Hey,
Hi, what's your name?
I'm Shaun.
Hi, Shaun.
Yep. And Shaun of the Dead came out when I was 19, and I kind of had to see it because of the name, and got me deep into the entire genre. But my question, I've always wondered, in Shaun of the Dead, you have the classic line by Ed, "We're coming to get you, Barbara," recognizing George Romero's legacy in the sort of kind of dead genre. The rumor is that you once screened Shaun of the Dead with Romero. Did you really screen it with him, and did he really not notice the reference?
Oh, no, we definitely screened it for him. It was before the film had come out, and me and Simon Pegg always kind of, we just reached out to him. We thought, because we knew that, like George Romero, that other filmmakers had sort of ripped him off and not really given him credit, and we thought it would be the nice thing to do is offer to screen it for him because the film was inspired by him. So before the film had come out, he was on holiday in Florida, and Universal arranged for him to watch it. And I think he watched it on his own with a multiplex. And the thing that always amused me is that it was George Romero and a security guard from Universal. And I was thinking, well, if anybody is allowed to pirate the movie, it's George Romero. I mean, I said, we're stealing from him. How can he steal from us? But then that night, me and Simon both got a phone call from George Romero. And me and Simon always talk about that as being, it was like the moment where our lives changed in terms of the world got smaller. The person who had inspired us had seen the movie, and he was calling us to say how much he loved it. And in the US, his quote was on the poster. So it was kind of like enormous. I don't think that's true I don't think he didn't get the reference.
Okay.
I think there was maybe, but yeah, he loved it. He couldn't have been nicer. And then we went and did a cameo in Land of the Dead, his next one, which was just fantastic. But we owe it all to George, and he was amazing, and R.I.P. What a man.
Absolutely. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Shaun. Hi, what's your name?
Hello, my name is Emma, and so you have a lot of reoccurring jokes and running bits in pretty much all your movies, but what would you say, out of all the running jokes in the Cornetto Trilogy, which one makes you laugh the hardest? Dogs Can't Look Up?
Yeah, I mean, that's only in the first one, though, right? So, I don't know. That's a good question. That is a good question. I think, I mean, the whole Cornetto thing sort of just, it's so funny that people refer to it as the Cornetto Trilogy, because the only reason it's in Hot Fuzz is because at the premiere of Shaun of the Dead, they gave us free Cornettos, and me and Simon were like, that's fucking amazing. We got free ice cream. And thinking, we should write Cornetto into the second film so we get free ice cream again. And then at the Hot Fuzz premiere, there was no ice cream. And I was like, what happened?
What are you even doing this for?
And then on the Hot Fuzz press tour, a journalist in the UK, Chris Tilley, he said, you've had 2 different flavors of Cornettos in your films. Does that mean this is going to be a trilogy? And I said, without sort of batting an eye, I said, oh yes, this is our tribute to Krzysztof Kozlowski, the 3 Colors trilogy. This is the 3 Flavors Cornetto trilogy, which is a joke that I thought of in that moment. And then by the time we'd ended the press tour, that had stuck as like fact. And it was like, so when you were planning the first of the Cornetto trilogy, and they were like, no, no, no. And then after a while, you start leaning into it and saying, yes, of course, this was all meant to be from the start. So I guess that's the thing that would probably be the running joke, because it was not even supposed to be a thing, and now it's the name of the series.
Thank you. It was very nice to meet you.
Thank you. All right, so we have just over 15 minutes left. We are going to try to get through as many as possible. Hi, what is your name?
Hello, I am Miles, big fan of Scott Pilgrim.
Thank you.
And my one question would be, if given the chance to put Mr. Chow from the comics into the Scott Pilgrim movie, who would you have casted to play the role?
Well, you know, I ran into him earlier. My good friend, it had to be Ki Hei Kwan, right? I say that because I literally saw him, and maybe if I say it loud enough, he'll hear me. So why don't I say him?
Thank you so much. Hello, what is your name?
Hi, I'm Joey. Appreciate you being here. You touched on this.
Spider-Man, don't give away your identity.
Sweatpants Spider-Man, so it's okay. You touched on this with Hot Fuzz a little bit already. Scott Pilgrim especially always kind of reminded me of the Coen Brothers movies, and that it seemed very tightly scripted. What's your view or approach to sort of having a very tight script or kind of letting the actors riff? And I just wanted to hear your opinion and your approach to that.
I think it sort of really depends. I think sort of those improv things can really work if it's set up to do that. Like something like Curb Your Enthusiasm as a show, the whole premise is that if they've plotted it and they have a scenario, and then the actors can just go. But like, when in the films, it's like really what it's about is you kind of like, there has to be an end line of the scene. And usually, and this is even when we did TV stuff with Space, is that I think what happens sometimes when improv goes badly is just scenes go on for so long. And Quentin Tarantino said this thing about actors improvising once that made me laugh. He says, actors can't improvise. All they can say is their character name and the F word. Like, no, fuck, oh, shit, stop, Dan, fuck. But, I mean, there's obviously some brilliant films that do improv and stuff. I think because we do, like you said, really tightly scripted films. And, like, you know, films that, like, we admire the screenplays of, like, Raising Arizona or Back to the Future. Like, every single word is written because it's tight. So I'm not against it as an idea, but, like, we've never really done it that much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, my name is Matt. My question is, what aspect of your original story for Adventures of Tintin ended up in the final film?
That's a good question, actually. I mean, what... I'll tell you a story that I haven't really told in too many interviews, but when Stephen Moffat had done the previous drafts of that script, and then me and Joe Cornish came on because he was going back to the UK to do Doctor Who, and Kathleen Kennedy, he was producing, this is one of the greatest notes about a screenplay that I've ever got. This is the only note we got on the script. She said, The current script is 110 pages long. We think the animation is going to cost $1 million a minute. We would love the script to be 88 pages long. And me and Joe were like, we can do that. And to be honest, what I think we did in our draft is that we went back to the books, and the books are very tightly written and very fast-paced. So we basically tried to bring it back to the books. I will say, and this has nothing to do with me, the finished running time of that film is 115 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, what is your name?
Hi, my name is Chelsea. You mentioned Korean cinema. What are some influences on your work that you don't think people would expect if they watch your films, whether in cinema, like all kinds of world cinema, or even beyond the arts or in other arts?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I think, as a young sort of film fan, I think like genre films would always be the jumping off point into other films. That like horror is always like a gateway, like into other filmmakers. So like the first like Ingmar Bergman film I ever saw was The Virgin Spring. Why was it that one? Because Last House on the Left was a remake of The Virgin Spring. So I guess I better watch that. And then you get into Ingmar Bergman. And so I think there's so many things that when I was a teenager that I got into other films that maybe people wouldn't expect me to, like Michelangelo Antonioni and like the neo-realists, Jacques Tati, like so many like international filmmakers. Louis Buñuel, like I think maybe that's actually a thing. Maybe like Louis Buñuel like would be a director that maybe, like Last Night in Soho is sort of semi-influenced by his last film, That Obscure Object of Desire. So also I feel like I'm still on the journey. Like learning about film history is a lifetime pursuit, and people should never be snobby about people not having seen anything, because there's no expiry date on movies, and there's tons of things that I still haven't seen. So I'm always feel like I'm always the student.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello, I'm Michael. Well, speaking of film history and films you haven't seen, I wanted to ask what's something that you've seen lately, new or old, that you think we might appreciate?
Maybe did you ask me this question in line as well?
No, I told you about my film theory using Hot Fuzz.
Oh, well, you know what I saw the other day that I'd seen before but never on the big screen, but I just went to see in Los Angeles Jean Cocteau's Orpheus, which I saw just a couple of days before seeing The Odyssey. And I was like, man, that's a great double bill. So I kind of wish I'd seen them on the same day, because they're both kind of adaptations of Greek mythology, and I thought that was really interesting. So Jean Cocteau's Orpheus, or Orphée in the French.
I'll pop it in the wish list. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we have about 10 minutes, so we're going to do a lightning round. We're going to try to get through as many questions as possible. Hello.
Hey. My name's Landrick, and in retrospect to the incredible cast of Scott Pilgrim and the career trajectory of everybody that's kind of bloomed with Chris Evans and the cast, would you consider your film as the pivotal moment that maybe pushed some of these cast members to the next level?
I mean, I think the credit for that goes to the casting directors. Like, there were people in the movie that I already knew and I was aware of, and I'd seen them in other things. Like, obviously, I knew who Chris Evans was, and I knew who Jason Schwartzman was, and even somebody like Anna Kendrick I'd seen in the film Rocket Science. And then there were people who came into that movie who were completely new to me, and that's a credit to like the casting directors like Alison Jones and Jen Houston. But when you're in an audition room and Aubrey Plaza walks in and it's the first time you've ever heard that name or seen that person, and they do their audition, and you look at the producers saying, wow. Or I remember the day that Brie Larson came into the audition room. I wasn't really previously aware of her, and she just kind of crushed it. So it's great. When I watch the credits of that film, even I go, wow, there's so many people in this. But I know what's funny. I won't say who, but there's somebody who's in the convention now who actually auditioned for the film and didn't get it, and we were just talking about that. And I said, the thing about that film is there were so many great people in the cast. You wouldn't even believe the people who were the second choices, all of whom are stars as well. So that's a credit to amazing casting directors.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi, I'm Deborah. I love The Running Man, but consensus is that Stephen King's adaptations are hit and miss, even though as of late, everyone has been doing great. How daunting was, or was it, to take him on?
Well, I mean, actually, the most nerve-wracking part of that production was I'd already been in contact with Stephen King over the years because he was a big Shaun of the Dead fan. And so we'd stayed in contact for quite a long time. But then, and I knew he was aware that we were working on the script, but the most nerve-wracking thing was the day where Stephen King has to approve the screenplay. Because not only is he Stephen King, one of the most famous living authors, but also he used to be an English teacher. So now you're giving your screenplay to the world's most famous English teacher. And so me and Michael Bacall that weekend were sweating. And then he started doing this thing where he screen capped lines that he liked and was sending to that like page by page. And after a while, my heart couldn't take it. I was just like, I'm just not going to look at my email for a bit until he's finished. But he was incredibly complimentary. So I felt very thankful. Like, because as you know, there's definitely ones that he doesn't care for. And usually if you don't see Stephen King's name on as an executive producer, that's why, you know. So he really loved the screenplay and he really loved the movie and did press with us and everything. And as a fan of his since a teenager, that meant the world to me. So he didn't actually give it a grade like an English teacher, but it was very heartwarming to get that response.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Doc Brown. Hello.
Hey. Hey, Edgar. My name is Ben, and it is said that you dropped out of Ant-Man because Disney took over, right?
Not Disney.
Or, what would your vision of Ant-Man would have been like? Would it have been any different from the one we have now?
Yeah, I think what kind of really happened there was that we had written a screenplay that we were really proud of, and it had existed for quite a while, and I guess the closer it got to production, that part of it started going away. And so the reason that I was sort of excited about it in the first place, once that starts going, you start to think, well, then why am I here? Like, if we're not even doing my take on the movie, so it was really that. I could feel that it was like going that way, and I thought it would probably be better to like step off before it kind of continued in that direction. So it was difficult because I had, cast some of the actors, but I don't regret not doing the movie. And I was happy that I eventually got a writing credit as well. But I think sort of what we had come up with was different to what they'd done. But, it's their series, so I don't kind of take it personally at all.
I would have liked to see it.
That's okay. Listen, I got those residuals, so I'm good.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Greg. Hello.
Hi, I'm Liam. And what was your favorite part about filming Shaun of the Dead?
You know what? It's like making any movie is really hard, and like sort of on a day-to-day basis, especially in comedies. Every day, nobody ever like after a funny sequence stands around and high-fives each other. It's always like, okay, now we're going over here, and now we got to go over there before the sun goes down. And so it's usually like that every hour of every day. And then I remember actually towards the end of the shoot, for some reason, I think just scheduling-wise, some of the stuff with Simon and Nick just in the apartment was done last. And we'd gone through all of the big action sequences. We'd gone through the Winchester sequence. And weirdly, at the end, we were down to just the two of them. And those were sort of the most fun bits because there was a little less pressure and there was a little more opportunity for them to screw around and stuff. So I sort of remember those sort of final days as actually being the most fun bit.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi, my name is Lydia. I love your movies.
Thank you.
I especially appreciate how it has such a unique point of view because I love being creative and it's really like something that I can share with my family. I was wondering what your best advice or how it was that you got into the industry.
Well, I think it was what I was saying before is I I basically just started making like amateur movies, which I guess over time got more sort of confident, and I just learned what I was doing through that. I mean, I didn't really go to film school. I went to sort of art college, and I was doing that. And you know, this is in a day before the internet and platforms where people can actually upload their stuff. There was very few outlets for amateur movies. You know, there might be the odd competition, or like, you know, there were a few things on TV in the UK where it was like a little competition for young filmmakers and stuff, which I kind of like got into. But I really just learned it by doing it. It was the only way to sort of like, I didn't really know what else to do other than like write things with your friends that you thought were funny and try and kind of like copy things from films that you liked and just try and learn that way. You know, I think that's how you develop your style eventually becomes the culmination of all of your influences, you know, and then maybe it then just through nature of who you are and where you're from, it just comes out in a different way. So I think you can only really learn by doing. And I think, I mean, it's similar to what I said before about not having a fear of failing. You've just got to get out there and get started, because nobody's gonna just hand you a check or ask you to do something if you've got nothing to show for it. So whatever you do first will probably be off your own back, and you'll learn a lot doing it.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have 2 minutes left. We're going to see it. Come on. Lightning round. Go.
Hey, Edgar. My name's Andy. I know Scott Pilgrim was a really big success. I always wondered why there wasn't a part 2. Are you just against doing sequels?
I think because it wasn't a big success.
Okay.
Or at least not initially. Like, I think, like I said earlier, like it didn't do that well at the theater, but then it obviously really picked up since. So I think that's part of it. And also I think it's something where, you know, that film is like all of those actors are in their early 20s. And so it really like you kind of crystallize them in that moment. So I'm not sure even if they said, would you go back with all of those actors now? I don't know whether that's the right move. I think sometimes things are sort of meant to be perfectly of their year, you know?
Yeah, thanks.
Hey, my name's Jack. Huge fan. You're an amazing character writer. Ben Richards was my the best written character I've seen in cinema so far. I was wondering, out of all your films, who has been your favorite character to write?
Oh, it's probably like Ed in Shaun of the Dead.
Nice. How's that for a slice of fried gold?
Just because it's sort of like kind of like it's like the sort of usually like your worst best friend and all the things that you absolutely shouldn't say.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, man. That's awesome.
All right, let's see if we can get...
I'll go quick. I don't mind doing a few more.
All right.
Okay. Probably got to go.
Hi, my name's Philip. If you were to do another very like heavily music-forward movie, kind of like Baby Driver, where everything's like synced to music, but in a different genre, what would you like to do?
That is a very good question, and if I had the answer, I'd write it. So maybe I need to go away and think about the answer.
Thank you.
Fair.
So maybe you've given me an idea.
Hi.
Hi, my name's Leah, L-I-A. I have to spell it out because, but anyways, I love Scott Pilgrim. It's my favorite movie ever. What was I gonna say? I'm so sorry. I'm getting like anxious. What was it like to work with Brian Lee O'Malley and like during when the comics were being made? Did you personally influence anything in the comics?
Yeah, I think I said it. There's definitely like 1 or 2 lines in the later books that me and Michael Bacall wrote, which Brian very asked permission. One of the things I really remember about that is that it was amazing working with him. One of the craziest things with that movie is Brian had drawn real locations in Toronto, and he still had the digital photos. So when we were location scouting the movie, he could tell us exactly where these places were. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the locations in the movies, including the outside of Scott's apartment, is literally the photo that he took in 2002, which he then drew. Now, the owners of that house had no idea that that was the case. They do now. And I remember when we were scouting those locations, I always said to the location manager, I said, don't make it look like we're just going to this one, because if they know we really want this one, they'll charge more. So we used to do this kind of dumb show of saying, well, what about number 12? Or what about number 16? Or maybe it's number 14. So we had all of those photos, so that was wild. And the other thing that Brian Lee O'Malley did is that any of the artwork in the film, or even the handwriting, we got him to do it. So basically, he would come up to the studio and we'd just get him drawing Like, you know, the flip charts in the movies and things, that's all Brian's work. Even like he would draw things for the mugs. So we put him to work in the art department, basically.
Thank you.
Now, unfortunately, we are out of time. We're going to get one.
We'll let you.
Real
You're
quick,
right there.
Be
You've
real
got
quick.
there.
You're there. Talk.
All right, hey.
And if you guys afterwards, if you want to find me at the booth, I'll
Yes,
answer
absolutely.
your questions later.
Hello, my name's Ben, and I was like, first of all, I love your movies. You're a very good director.
Ben, get to your
Filmer.
question.
All right, I was wondering, would you ever consider filming an anime like a hentai, maybe?
A hentai?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, that's a heck of a last question.
You know?
I have a different pitch for you. What about a live action hentai?
That would be amazing. Gucci third leg.
On that note,
Jason Love.
You
They're
get the
all great.
octopus.
On that note, yes, if you weren't able to, if we weren't able to get to you, please swing by the table. Edgar, it was an absolute
Thank you very much,
pleasure.
guys. Thank
you
you.
guys for hanging out. Before we go,